Are you struggling to find reliable DPS in Mewgenics? Luckily, one of the strongest choices is actually a class you start with. The Hunter excels because it consistently output damage while leveraging a wide range of strong abilities and passives, making it one of the most versatile and reliable DPS classes. What makes the Hunter even better is that you're not locked to opting for one build type, as the class is flexible enough that any combination of abilities and passives can perform effectively, making them a perfect addition to every team. Let's do a quick overview for the role. The Hunter is a primary range DPS class that also has utility. It has high damage potential, ranged advantage, flexible abilities, traps, and things like Bramble for utility. And even setups that don't seem perfectly optimized will still give you a toolkit that works in almost every battle. And unlike a similar class like the Mage, the Hunter can engage enemies consistently and safely without the need of line of sight. The Hunter is such a strong DPS option as it has a lot of things like multi-shot attacks, traps that stun. Many passives will do things like give extra attacks or boost damage. Not to mention that ranged attacks are inherently more safe and powerful compared to a melee attack. And the access to a wide range of utility allows the hunters to be very adaptable to various enemy types and even bosses. Now let's talk about how you can implement these into build strategies. Although there's a lot of build types you can go for, you can combine essentially any of these and still be effective in each battle. Now let's first cover stacking basic attacks. There are a few abilities and passives that give you multiple basic attacks. The Catch Projectiles passive will give you a 30% chance to block enemy projectiles and a 100% chance to block allied projectiles. When you do this, you gain a bonus attack. Classes like the Necromancer have basic attacks and abilities that are projectiles, and what's great is you can stack this multiple times in a single turn. Combine this strategy with the ability Stakeout. Now this is only castable if you haven't used any actions. This will immediately end your turn, and on your next turn, your ranged abilities deal double damage. Within 2 turns, you can stack multiple basic attacks and also double the damage of ranged abilities. Now do note that Stakeout is for abilities and not basic attacks. But the point of this build is to fire off a lot of basic attacks and following them up with high damaged ranged abilities. There's another ability called Arrowsmith, where you gain +1 bonus attack at the start of your next turn. So hypothetically you can cast this multiple times, combined with the things I previously mentioned, leading to 3 or 4 basic attacks, followed up with some very high damage ranged abilities. Now the next build is pretty straightforward, and it's Bramble and trap spamming. The passive Hazardous doubles tile damage and effects. Pair this with something like Bramble Shot and you can quickly cover the field in deadly slowing Bramble. Another great passive is Thorn Arrows, which will spawn Bramble with your basic attack. Bramble is a great defense tool, as you can force enemies and bosses to continuously walk into it, which will damage them and use up a lot of their movement. This next build is one of my favorites, the Accuracy build. You want to pair high damage, low accuracy abilities with passives and items that increase your hit chance. The Bullseye passive makes your ranged attacks never miss, and it gives an additional 25% critical hit chance. Now pair this with something like Heavy Shot, which is an ability that has high damage but a 70% chance to miss. You'll completely mitigate the miss chance and deal very high damage, plus whatever critical damage you hit as well. Now in this combination, the shot can easily deal 20, 30, or even 40 damage with a single shot. A great item for this build is the Monocle, which gives +1 charisma, but makes it so your physical attacks will not miss. Even if you're not going for an accuracy build, it's a nice item to hit enemies that are in something like tall grass. There's a few notes I want to discuss real quick. Physical attacks will have something like a sword or arrow icon next to the damage, whereas magical attacks will have the star wand. There are even some abilities or basic attacks that are both. And do note that luck affects everything that has a % chance, whether it's a % chance an item will break or an ability will miss. Higher luck will affect this, and make it to where it's not exactly the percentage that it says. Alright, so enough about accuracy and luck. Let's talk about charming builds. And I'll say build here loosely, as just one simple charming attack or ability can make every battle easier, and you really only need one for it to be super effective. Now that's not to say you can't have multiple charm abilities. All I'm saying is you only need one of these abilities or passives to make a significant difference in a battle. Something like Cupid's Arrow will damage a unit and charm them, allowing it to attack enemies for a turn. This is also helpful as other enemies will attack the charm unit as well, so it's great for damaging and distracting multiple enemies. Each of these builds can quickly snowball a run. Suddenly, your 10 to 12 damage can turn into multiple attacks, or dealing 10 to 12 damage to multiple enemies, or even deal upwards of 20 to 30 damage with high accuracy in a single hit. Now let's transition to winning repeatable strategy, where I'll do a deep dive into specific skill and passive combinations, as well as a build example that I had recently. One of my favorite abilities is Sentry Mode. The next time an enemy ends movement in your basic attack range, you'll automatically attack it. When this ability is upgraded, until your next turn, any enemy that ends movement in your basic attack range will be attacked. If you cast this multiple times and you're positioned correctly, this can easily kill multiple enemies in a single turn. Now even in boss battles, some of them will have multiple movements in a single turn, leading to multiple attacks from this ability. Other great passives are ones like Animal Control, where units hit with this will attack an enemy in range. Sleep Darts. At the start of each battle, you and all allies that don't have weapons gain a Sleep Dart, which inflicts sleep on an enemy and has a good range. Now this will cause them to miss the turn, and if you have all 4 sleep darts, you can easily turn boss battles or battle encounters into something much more manageable. My favorite passive is Thrill of the Hunt, where at the end of each battle, if you killed at least 3 enemies with the hunter, you permanently gain 1 dexterity, and also find a random consumable item. Dexterity affects ranged attack damage. Pair this with basically any other ability, you can almost guarantee your dexterity increases every single battle, and this will start to snowball into higher damage, leading to more guaranteed kills and increasing your dexterity even more so. Even skills like Marked and Persistent Hunt are amazing. You can inflict enemies with the Marked effect, which has a 100% critical chance for physical attacks. Ignores armor, cannot miss. In all honesty, these skills and passives can stand alone as powerful in their own regard without synergy. But when you do get that powerful synergy, it creates something so broken that it will almost guarantee that you won't lose. Now let's talk about a recent build example I had that I absolutely loved. Now for context, I was at the end of Boneyard, and ironically it came down to my hunter. This hunter had been down maybe upwards of 24 times at this point. It was locked into a cycle of an item reviving him to 1 HP at the end of each round, and then the weather effect killing him and redowning him. Despite the stats being greatly lowered, I had an insane build to where it didn't even matter. I had the passive Rubber Arrows that bounces projectiles to another enemy within 3 tiles. Rubber Cement, which is a trinket that also bounces projectiles to another enemy within 2 tiles. This was paired with Thorn Arrows, where basic attacks spawn Bramble. This allowed my hunter to bounce the projectiles between 3 close enemies. This also caused Bramble to spawn under every single enemy that was hit. I even had the Boxing Charm, which makes you start with a bonus attack, allowing me to fire 2 basic attacks, both bouncing between 3 enemies, all spawning thick bramble beneath the enemies. It turned my run from stressing about winning to just seeing how quickly I could kill all the enemies. And this is just one example of a crazy synergy that can essentially break your character. I honestly feel like the hunter is so powerful given that its ceiling is insanely high, and honestly the floor is powerful enough on its own. My last few thoughts on different builds is that these are easily repeatable. I feel like it's reliably effective. Even with random assortment of passives and abilities, your hunter will still get pretty powerful. And another tip is to always give hunters items that will increase dexterity, which is the range damage. And I also find that health regen or constitution boosting items are useful as well, as hunters will always have lower HP. Now I briefly want to cover some mistakes to avoid. Hunters will always have a low health risk, especially earlier in a run when it hasn't leveled up, or if you don't have any health boosting items. Think of them as a glass cannon. You have to be delicate with them, but with the right strategy, can be very effective. Items that give brace, shield, constitution boost, or health regen are a requirement for hunters. Another mistake is don't over-rely on complex builds that take too long to set up. Builds like basic attack stacking can take a few turns to set up. You don't want enemies to be going undamaged for 3 or 4 turns. And in a similar vein, you don't want to overestimate the carry potential. Now hunters can definitely carry a run, but bad placements or early deaths can ruin the potential if the constitution gets far too low. Just don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You really need other stronger units that can tank or distract enemies, or heal your team, as without this there's going to be way too much pressure during a battle. And I really want to reiterate how important positioning is. Some bosses or enemies can easily weaken your hunter, or even one-shot them. Positioning your hunter behind cover, or in tall grass for example, is a great way to stay safe. Positioning is also important as you don't want to be too close to enemies, as you cannot target enemies that are within a few tiles of you. I really want to drive home the point that the hunter is kind of a formula of consistency plus versatility, which always leads to stronger DPS. And remember that you're not locked to a single build type. Often you'll be put in a position where you have to take different skills or passives that might not necessarily synergize with what you're going for, but the beauty of it is that's what makes the hunter so strong, having a combination of high damage skills, but also being able to distract enemies, or even cast debuffs on bosses. Adaptability is the key to winning bosses, especially if you're in an area that you haven't been before. And that's about it for the hunter. If you like this video, I did a similar video for the tank class. Let me know in the comments what some of your favorite passives and abilities are for the hunter. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.